Good afternoon, youngsters. I want to teach you two things about the urine toxic metals test. First of all, I want to teach you how to take it very, very simply. But when you order it from us, you'll get instructions, so you don't have to remember all this. But sometimes words are easier than oral words are easier than written words. You can grab this for a quick refresher. Second, I want to show you some of our heavy metals tests to give you an idea of when is the best time for you to get the best results from your investment in taking the test. So first of all, how do you take the test? You can order the test from us. We use doctor's data, 6-hour urine toxic metals test, and it is a chelation challenge. Chelation literally is defined crab's claw. It means that the chelating agent in this situation would be DMSA. You're going to take the supplement, it's going to reach into your tissues, grab the toxin, and pull it out of the body into the urine. So you'll collect your urine for 6 hours. You'll call FedEx, the instructions are in the container, and FedEx will come and pick it up from you and send it to Doctor's Data at no special cost to you. So you get up in the morning. Sorry about the cat. She is lonely, I think. Come on. Come on. So you get up in the morning, you use the bathroom. You take DMSA, 100 milligrams. I think it's milligrams. It's on the container. Let me see here. Yes, 100 milligrams of DMSA per 10 pounds body weight. So if you weighed 100 pounds, you would take 10 capsules. You collect all of your urine in the container that comes in the test kit. You'll leave it in the refrigerator during that 6 hours. So you get up, use the bathroom, take the DMSA. 4 hours later, you take another 100 milligram capsule of the DMSA, but you continue to collect your urine for 6 hours. Then you fill out the paperwork. You identify what is the total amount of DMSA you took. You put that on the paperwork, and this is a post-chelation challenge. Chelation means you took the chelation, the DMSA, and then you collected the urine. That means post-chelation challenge. You'll mark that on your order form. And you get results, usually within a couple of weeks. This is critical. After that 6 hours, you need to continue to do a heavy metals detox cycle for the rest of that week. So at this point, you should already know how to do heavy metals chelation. Otherwise, I would not have ordered the test for you because I'm very picky about who orders the test. I don't want you to waste your money on it. And it's easy to waste your money on this test. I want you to get good results and get your value. So you would continue your detox cycle for that week as usual, using cytodetox every 3 hours for the rest of that 7-day period. You're just doing the DMSA, the 2 doses, the mega dose, 100 milligrams per 10 pounds body weight, and then the second dose 4 hours later of just 100 milligram capsule. So that's the only DMSA you take. The rest of the 7 days you just take cyto. So that's how to take the test. You can get the DMSA from me, or you can order it. Right now, as I record this in 2021, you can get the DMSA from Living Supplements in South Africa. You can order them capsules individually, I believe. The last time I did it, it takes a while for it to come in. Last year, the mail was delayed significantly, so you never know how long it's going to take. It might take a month. Or you can order them from Northern Health Products. I personally would not order anywhere else unless you can get your dentist to give you a prescription for DMSA. Now, at that point, hopefully it's from a compounding pharmacy and you know the quality. But we've tried a lot of DMSA that really is not good. And number one, it's a waste of money. But worse than that, number two, it gives you a false reading, and it will show your heavy metals to be low, and that gives you a false sense of security, and that's worse than not taking the test at all. So I would only recommend those 2 places right now. That could change. If you want to send me a message, then let me ask me if there's another way. I'm happy to do that for you. So on to the next topic. The good, the bad, the ugly, the value of the toxic metals test. And to show you that, what I need to do is share my screen, because I want to show you some of the test results that I've received. Although first, let me describe it this way. The only thing that's going to show up in the test is what your body would release into your urine. That can be affected by a lot of different things. If you are sick that week, if you have a very stressful week emotionally, if you're living in a mold environment, if you are currently suffering from significant other toxic exposures, like, I don't know what would be a good example other than mold. If you have Lyme and it's very active and very horrible, your body is not going to release toxic metals very much, because the body burden is already so heavy that you wouldn't be able to get them all the way out of the body. So that's when you need to talk to me about what's the best time for you specifically to do the heavy metals test. You need to have done a prep cycle first. You need to have nourished the detox organs and opened up those detox organs, so that when the chelator goes in and grabs it and the body pushes the metal into the urine, it can get out of the body into the urine. That's the only way to measure it. Well, you could do a brain biopsy, but we're not going to do that. So this is the best possible test, and we have tested many of them. And I'm part of Health Centers of the Future. It's not just me you're working with. It's Dr. Pompa and all of the researchers and doctors in our group. And this is, believe me, the best option available right now. So you need to do a prep phase to open up the detox pathways. Ideally, I like for you to have done a little bit of detox. A lot of times people will go get their amalgam fillings out and they want to do a urine toxic metals test immediately. That's really not the best investment of your money, because at that moment, your body may not be in the habit of routinely releasing metals. Second mistake someone might make is try to do it in advance to give them a baseline. No, that's a complete waste of money and gives you a completely false negative. I personally wouldn't order it for someone before they had done any kind of prep or any kind of detox, because your detox pathways are all closed up. Those metals aren't going to come out. So we have to do a prep. We have to give your body some time to start detoxing. We would never do a toxic metals test if you still have amalgam in your mouth, because first of all, your body's not going to release more mercury from your tissues when there's a constant source of mercury in your mouth. Second, it might make you feel awful. It's going to, perhaps it could pull more mercury out of those fillings. So we're not going to do that. It's not worth it. In one situation where you would get a very negative, very false negative, someone who has autism likely has very high metals, and that is our clinical experience from decades of doing this. They've got very high levels, but their test is typically going to come back very, very low. So that's one situation where this test is not ideal. Another situation, if you're working with a child, it's probably better to test mom, because these days she is their #1 source. Children are not born with amalgam fillings in their mouth. Now, if they've had a lot of vaccinations with mercury in them, then yeah, they could have a current source of mercury, but mom is the primary source of heavy metals. So typically we don't test children. Okay, so I think that's good. That's when you should take the test, when you should not take the test. How often should you retake it? You could do it every 6 months. I think probably once a year is probably a better investment of your money. It's not outrageously expensive. It's maybe $200 or less, and then you have to buy the DMSA on top of that, which might be $20 to $40 for the DMSA. So it's not horribly expensive. You could do it every 6 to 12 months. I think it would depend on your situation. For me, I had 8 mercury fillings in my mouth, and I had had them probably more than 30 years. Plus, I had very high lead. We were in a mold exposure when I first started detoxing. And so I knew that it was going to take years for me to detox. And then, eventually we discovered that we also had Lyme, which slowed down my body's detox of metals because my body was struggling with detoxing the Lyme. So in that situation, every 6 months is probably not a good idea. So everyone's different. And this is a time when it's best to be in a custom program, or at least in our membership group, so you can ask me a question. So now let me share my screen. In fact, let me pause there. If you have questions, find one of our online membership groups and ask me a question, and I'm happy to help you with that. So I'm going to share my screen. I want these PDFs here. And this is not going to be ideal. We're just going to do the best we can with what we have. I do have permission. These are my children's tests. I do have permission to share them with you. When we first started getting tested, this was in May of 2008. The test only covered, I don't know, what is that, 15 different metals. So look at the arsenic was very low. You see the lead was low. Lead was 3.7. Mercury is 0.8. Here's a good way to think of lead and mercury when you're using DMSA. Pretend that we have a parking lot and a limited number of parking spots, and we have some Ferraris and we have some, I don't know, some bicycles. The Ferraris are going to rush in and grab the parking spots first. That's lead. Lead is going to take up the majority of the binding capacity, the magnet capacity of the DMSA. So you can look at that mercury level, and we typically say you probably have 4 times as much mercury as the test reveals. Lead is stored in the bones in the body. Mercury is stored primarily in the brain, and this test is not pulling from the brain, it's only pulling from the body. So we don't get a good ratio of mercury to lead. Plus, the body is going to release different toxic metals at different levels on each test. So as we go through here, you'll see that. Sometimes you may see thallium really high and then low next time, and then maybe something else may be high on your next test. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've had a recent exposure. It just means that happens to be the metal that your body is releasing at that point. Remember, that's all we're testing, what the body will release on this specific day. It is valuable to test for lead. That is one of the best values of this test, because you typically will be able to watch lead come down over time, and you'll also get a good idea of if there's a metal in a test, it's definitely in your body. You're not going to get a false positive. You might get a false negative, like maybe there is aluminum in his body, and even though it doesn't show, but you're not going to get a false positive. So you can watch lead change over time. The others are going to ebb and flow over time. So then let's look at the next test, which was done in August of 2011. Look at that lead, almost off the chart. And notice that this test was updated. They test a lot more metals now than they did in 2008. See that his body was releasing aluminum on this day. And some barium. I did have a barium enema before he was born, so he got that from me. Cadmium, cesium, 2011. Let's stop and ask ourselves, had there been some kind of nuclear problem? Don't remember when Fukushima was, but we saw a lot of cesium after that. And then we've got mercury, nickel, thallium, which can come from your city water. It can also come from fracking oil wells. And where we were living at the time, there were some gas wells being coming in. So that was his second test. Then his next test was 2012. So 1 year later, look at that lead, 8.7, down from 29. Wow. The aluminum was a little higher than it was. So this is 5.3, aluminum here was 2.7. Let's look at that cesium. On the first test was 7. On this next test, cesium was 5.2. It had come down a little. Let's look at thallium was higher on this one, 0.4. On this earlier test, thallium was, still 0.4, it was the same. And tin and tungsten are there. So let's look at his last test, which was done in 2013. And the lead here was 9.8. Let's go back in time. His previous lead was 8.7. So his lead went up. Had he been exposed to lead? Maybe, because he had been in theater and he was doing art, he was doing props and things, and he may have used some lead paint. He may have been doing some soldering. That's a possibility. But again, remember, really the only thing we can test is what will come out of the body, and that will ebb and flow over time. Notice here we have arsenic and barium. Let's look back. Did we have those? We did have those in the previous test. And yet in the first test, there was no arsenic. Actually, that was his second test. In his first test, there was a little bit. So you see that arsenic was up and down and up and down. Okay, so then I want to move to one other test. Okay, so let's look at one other series of tests. I want to show you my tests. First, let's look at, here's my first toxic metals test. Look at that aluminum, almost off the chart. My lead was high, mercury was high, nickel, thallium, tungsten. That was in 2008. Then the next test I took was 2010. Notice how significantly reduced the aluminum was. Let's look at the one after that, was 2014. Still a little bit of aluminum. Still some barium, 2014. 2010, I had barium. So it's, my body's not releasing the barium very quickly. My lead was 13, first of all. Second test, lead was 10. Third test, my lead was 12. That doesn't mean I was exposed to more lead. It means my body was releasing more lead. So let's go back to that aluminum. I believe that reducing that aluminum like that, and then down even farther, absolutely saved my life. My grandmother had Alzheimer's and she was in a nursing home more than a decade. So it doesn't matter how much money it costs me to detoxify my cells, because if I can be productive and work another year or 2 or 5 or 10, that will repay that money many times over. And that doesn't even count quality of life. My grandmother had no quality of life for the last decade. And I want quality of life. That's what life means. Just existing is not quality of life. So let me stop sharing the screen there. Okay, so in our work, when I have a client who's in a custom program with me, I have them do get rid of their amalgam fillings, at which point they've already done a prep phase. They've already nourished those detox organs and opened those detox pathways. I have them detox maybe 1 or 2 cycles, maybe for about a month or so. Then we do the toxic metals test. Then depending on the situation, I may have them redo it 6 months. I probably just have them redo it about every 12 months, depending on the person and depending on what we find on that second test. So I hope that this has really been helpful. And if you have questions, please let me know anytime you have questions. I'm so proud of you for investing in your health, because it is absolutely your greatest asset.